The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Degrees on the processor. 12 degrees. Ain't that something? Why? Because Windows 10 is a little better with processor power management even on an old Phenom like this one. Well, if I set it over to power save mode, it'll be a little bit more stubborn in terms of not moving up beyond 700 megahertz, and there's a noticeable performance drop. But all that time spent at 700 megahertz, I don't know what the cycling is for. But if I switch it over to power save mode, let's watch those numbers as I make the switch. Just keep the camera right in the middle. We're now in power saver mode. Watch it doggedly just sit there at 700 megahertz until I slam the heck out of it with something. Makes it a little bit sluggish, so to speak, but 700 megahertz per core anyways. So yeah. Oh, there we go. Back down to the minimum temperature for at least a little bit at a time. Of course, the machine's warmed up right now. But we're not really here to play around with Tuxedo. We're here to talk about this miracle child over here. Well, if there were a computer version of such a thing. So, the Silver Bullet. It came back, I got it running again, and I even recorded a video of putting Linux on it yesterday before accidentally blowing away the footage today. No big loss. To record that Quicko flick earlier responding to V Westlife. No hard feelings, pal. But anyways, so I accidentally blew away the footage, but that's no big deal because, number one, the build that I have in this thing is not what I want to keep. I do not want the Silver Bullet running off a mechanical drive. I'm not masochistic like that. I have gotten so used to solid-state drives that I just can't possibly have a major system still running off a spinning platter. I haven't tried an SSHD yet, but we'll talk about that hybrid technology at some other time. That's really only good for situations where you're forced to use one drive and you need a trade-off between the speed of solid state and the capacity of full mechanical, but that's a completely different discussion altogether. The big problem with the video I recorded that I accidentally blew away is that I did it last night when I'd run around like a maniac setting up for today's very successful Pick-to-Voice launch at my 9 to 5, and it went extremely well. We surprised a lot of people, and I'm getting lots of compliments from the visitors. So it went really well, but last night I was so amped up and I'd done so much running around that I just got really tired as I tried putting some various distros of Linux on this thing, and by the end of the night, I was barely even able to sit up straight. I had so little energy that I was making Jeb Bush look hyper. Yeah, you know the whole "please clap" thing that went viral and went all over. Folks in CNN were making fun of him or something like that. I saw it going around. Please clap. Wow. Might as well bring an applause sign with him like they use in some of those stage productions or comedy films. Anyways, I'll let the 2016 election be the drama mess that it is. For now, though, we've got some hardware swapping to do, beginning with finding a way for the Silver Bullet to go solid state, and I know precisely how to do such a crazy task something. There it is, the worst computer I've ever owned, and a waste of an SSD. This is the crap book. I do not actually try to use this machine anymore, it's more of an appliance. I turn it on, and whenever it finishes booting, I'll do like little tiny things with it, but this thing can't handle anything. It has an older AMD APU that's dual-core, and just horrible. I think the performance of this dual-core is probably on par with the original Athlon XP 2000 in the original Silver Bullet, and that was single-core. I actually think my 2005 system, which is single-core, actually gets higher scores than this thing does. So I don't really use it for too much except appliance type stuff. I load YouTube on it for YouTube uploads, and if I want a wireless bridge onto the wireless network, then I'll use this for that. But it's pretty bad when this thing basically is router plus. But it exists, and that's about it. And it's a waste of an SSD. And the most interesting part, and this is why I want the SSD from this one specifically to go into the silver bullet, the original SSD that I picked up in 2011, yeah, 5-year-old SSD as of the end of this year, it was, what, 120-ish gigs for $270? Technology has certainly improved a lot since then in terms of price and performance, although mechanical is still better in terms of price for capacity anyways. But yeah, so it's hard to believe this 5-year-old, that the SSD's 5 years old to begin with, but still works after all these years when I've had hard drives that conked out after 3 years. And the big thing is this SSD is SATA 2, so it will match perfectly the motherboard in the silver bullet, which is also SATA 2. It wasn't until the Tuxedo's motherboard that SATA 3 actually was a thing, so it might be polishing a turd to put a newer SSD in the silver bullet. So the question is, if we're going to downgrade this thing to mechanical, what are we going to downgrade it to? Well, I am rocking and rolling with some Vantech Nexstar cases of old 2.5-inch drives that I was using as plug-in drives. I don't really have much use for plug-in drives anymore, though, because solid state has gotten that much better. So I don't know. I don't think I'm going to have much use for these enclosures, but I'll keep them around just for the heck of it. These are USB 2 anyways, so I do have to shuffle some 2.5-inch drives around, though. I need to find one that's at least 300 gigs to put on the in the other device. What is it? The crap top. That's right. The old compact with the half-broken screen, because the recovery discs will not work with a drive that's less than 300 gigs. Because the original drive was 300 gigs, so the image won't work. So I got to factory restore that thing in order to get its free Windows 10 upgrade before the free offer expires. So we got to take care of that. And also, if I can find the better, I don't know which of these drives. I do have a 2.5 drive backing up my 250 gig SSD with the image that I use for the local disk images. So I have that, but I'm not taking it out of Tuxedo. It's going to come out of, I think one of these might fit the bill here. So the idea here is grab some crap drive, the dog with the least fleas, so to speak, and then put wherever the 300 gig Hitachi or whatever one that it was that the crap top originally came with, put that back in the crap top so it can get its Windows 10 free upgrade, and then go from there. So yeah. We've got some hardware swapping to do, and the Great Sift still needs to happen, but I think the Great Sift can be more of a thing that happens when we're closer to spring and it's warmer out. Alright, let's see what the heck these were. I know one of them is I know there's an 80 gig, which is from my 2007 laptop all those years ago. Then there's a 250 gig Seagate, which will be good for the crap book, yeah. And then the crap top has its 300 gig Hitachi out here somewhere. I don't know, between this, and inside the crap top, something's gotta give. Let's figure out what we're swapping here. Surprise drive number 1, 300 gigs Hitachi. Good, I guessed correctly. Let me guess, mystery drive number 2 is the 80 gig drive that I really can't find any real use for. Exhibit B, Toshiba plug-in drive. This is the one from the old laptop from years and years ago. That's only 80 gigs, so this is the crappiest drive that I have. So, then, I guess we have our match, so to speak. The Vantech Nexstar that's not plugged in, namely this one, well, it'd be nice if we showed the actual, yeah. So the Nexstar TX that's not plugged in needs to go inside the crap top. The crap top's drive needs to go inside the crap book, and then the crap book's SSD needs to go into the silver bullet. And there's the Hitachi they were looking for. This was the original drive inside the crap top, but it got really slow because it had a couple of years on it. As predicted, because this computer was actually made to be upgraded. I'm usually not a big fan of compacts, but at least compact doesn't have one big plastic piece on the back, unlike the turd Shiba. So, anyways, that's enough of making fun of this thing. It is still an Athlon 2 dual core, but anyway, so yeah, as I figured, Seagate Momentous 250 gig. This is one that I bought to replace the Toshiba in the old computer from a long time ago. Still works though. I tried putting it in here because this was the best performing out of all the hard drives that I had. Unfortunately, the size is too small to use the backup image to upgrade this thing to Windows 10, assuming it still powers on. This definitely has some potential as a system that I could, find some way to get working with the whole Windows 10 thing. We'll deal with Windows 10 on this thing. We still have some time. We have up until a year after Windows 10's release in order to get this working right, so... Alright, we just gotta get these side pieces off, mount the Hitachi back on there, and put the original drive back in here for one last re-image. Once this is registered into the hardware database for Windows 10 licenses, then I think we're good to go. Now that's what I'm talking about. We're back to 300 gigs on the crap top, which can now be factory restored and upgraded to Windows 10 to give me another Windows 10 machine. And we also have this, 250 gig Seagate Momentous to go into the crap book. Now here's the thing about this drive. Because it's a Seagate, this now means I can use Seagate Disk Wizard to transfer the files over. So just install Seagate Disk Wizard, plug in the plug-in drive, which will contain this drive, and then clone the SSD to this for a very, very near seamless transition back to mechanical nonsense on the appliance known as the crap book. Since I'm not going to use it for any real usage ever again except la doing stuff in the background. Oops. We have to screw with this thing a little more. The Vantech Nexstar TX enclosure is masking that the drive inside of it is a Seagate. We gotta get the Intel version of the Acronis program. Whatever. That was beyond stupid. First and foremost, the Intel data migration software is 404ing at Intel's site. So I actually had to go to a third-party software site in order to get a copy of this stuff. But anyways, let's see if it's already on here. Well, no, it shouldn't be, because I installed Windows 10 from scratch. I just want to clone this drive so that I don't have to reinstall Windows 10, because on this piece of junk netbook, reinstalling Windows 10 means you have to get a thumb drive working as your CD-ROM, so to speak. That doesn't really work too well. I always found it to be rather pokey, although there is a utility that makes it rather easy. I don't find that it works all that incredibly well. Ready for the slogfest to begin? Oh, this is gonna suck, because the enclosure at USB 2 speeds is capped at around 30 megabytes a second. You could probably get at least double or triple that if it were hooked up directly. Also, the mini USB cord on the thing's not in great shape, so hopefully it doesn't disconnect on me. Oh, brilliant. You need to pick an Intel SSD as the destination drive. There's the old piece of junk. Well, there's only one thing to do now. So, because we need Seagate Disk Wizard instead of the crappy Intel migration tool, we have to use a machine with a Seagate drive that's actually accessible. So, what we're going to end up having to do is the painfully slow transfer with this inside another drive enclosure, going from USB 2 enclosure to USB 2 enclosure on Tuxedo with crappy USB connectors. SSD running on the floor. How low can you go? Of course, this is the part where it gets easy. I want to go from USB to USB. Let's just click the right things here. There we go. Get to something in the screen anyways. We want to go from the SSD back to the mechanical drive that's on USB at an abysmally slow speed, because the USB 2 controllers in these things are probably going to cap the transfer at 30 megs a second or something horrible like that. The destination hard disk has stuff that might be useful. Yeah, let's blow it all away. Non-system GPT. No, we want this to be like that. So, we want this to be bootable, so we'll take the first one. But notice what this Seagate Disk Wizard one is actually letting me do. Because I have at least one Seagate drive, which is the drives in the array, plus I think the backup drive's a Seagate or something like that. Restored as is, disk layout remain MBR, etc, etc, etc. We'll do things this way and just go like dish. Okay, we ready for pain? Welcome back to the wonderful world of mechanical drives. Don't worry, I'm quite certain that Disk Max and other utility programs will be able to... Well, that's the thing. I mean, the slowness of this computer kind of masked most speed improvements that an SSD could bring to this thing, so I see Windows 10 is booting up. Now we can reinstall the SSD, blank everything, blow it all away, and then get ready to mount it inside the Silver Bullet, which presents a rather bizarre problem. I don't have any remaining 2.5 to 3.5 inch brackets for it, so we're going to have to hack job something for now. And welcome to automatic repair. Yeah, it crashed instantly.
Epic fail.
Well, that's it, I'm calling it a night. I don't really feel like playing with this horrible excuse for a netbook all night. Good morning, everyone. One of the things that sucks about getting old is that you get to the point where any amount of physical activity sticks with you for a while. Got a bit of soreness from the running around I've been doing for the past 2 days, and I want to do more physical stuff, so I guess I better get used to it. After all, I went through this last time I had a warehouse... Well, the warehouse fiasco job, eventually I did get used to it, But, alright. So this was a very, very full check disk CFR. Still in backup mode. Question is, what happens when we restart it? Shoot, I haven't even had my coffee yet. Can exit do... Will exit bounce us out like it did in a... Oh, yeah! Huh, old Windows 3.1 type stuff. Okay, let's do continue to Windows 10. Now that's the click noise that it made when it started up. This might take a while, of course, because it has a mechanical drive. Maybe I could make my coffee in the time it takes for it to either start or not start. But that check disk found a bazillion things wrong with the drive, which is to be expected, because at a low level, SSDs are managed very differently than mechanical... You piece of...
Epic fail.
Nope, not good enough. Let's take the reset tool for a spin. Doo-de-doo-de-doo-de-doo. Well, the coffee's going anyways. See what this does. So this is basically what I do. I take a Sunbeam hotshot, I put a little thing in the bottom so that I don't have to have a mug that's that size, and then I can use any kind of size cup that I want. We got Beaumont Classic, or Beaumont Coffee Instant Classic Roast. Instant stuff, obviously a parody of Folgers. This is the stuff that Aldi rolls with. It's pretty strong stuff, though. It's definitely punchier than the Keurig stuff that we've got in the office. I'm often tempted to take this in my lunch to work and make more of it when I'm there. But yeah, instead of putting water in the microwave or something like that, it makes a ton of noise, then it clicks off and it's hot. Handy that. And the reset is underway, with it set to keep all the files. This is good to go. 2 things of sucralose and some hazelnut stuff. All of it from Aldi, of course. Seriously, people who actually go to restaurants to buy their coffee, they must love blowing money. This stuff's A-OK. And because it's instant coffee, it's like Kool-Aid for grown-ups. You mix in some powder to some water, and then maybe add something resembling sugar to it, and some other stuff, and you got something to drink. Yeah, the people that run on Dunkin', so to speak, I think they're just lazy asses if this stuff only takes like a minute or two. Showering takes longer than making this stuff with a Sunbeam hotshot.
There was a problem resetting your PC. No changes were made.
Well, at least I've had my coffee and I've had some breakfast now, and you can probably hear the difference. Well, so much for a simple disk swap. There's some wacko, low-level something or another that is still obviously a problem, and now this thing is restarting all by itself.
Epic fail.
One last-ditch attempt to get this working would be to put the SSD back in here and see what happens. If it boots, we can run a check disk on the C drive and then fiddle around with it from there. But we're just going to hack job it back in just enough to get it working again, and then we'll see what we can do. Maybe it would make more sense to put an image together and just load an image instead of trying to direct transfer like this. Oh, would you look at that? It works again. Although it's giving me an error that the battery doesn't have any charge on it. That could possibly be because this thing is running loose. The bottom's not even on. Fortunately, this thing is on a non-conducting wooden surface. Alright, the fun continues. Check disk CFR this piece of junk, and then how are we going to transfer the image over to... Well, there is another option available. Make a discrete image file off of the SSD after doing the said check disk. Take that discrete image file. Hi, Steam. Bye, Steam. Take the discrete image file over to Tuxedo. Plug in the mechanical drive via USB, and then go from Tuxedo onto that. I have Seagate drives in there, so I can use Seagate Disk Wizard quite easily. Question is, how am I going to make an image file of this SSD? Maybe I should do everything on Tuxedo. Plug it in one at a time, make an image file of it, and then take the image file and bring it over to, something along those lines. But first thing we need to do is check disk CFR on this piece of junk. Check disk. Disk does not end with J. Don't do this through a viewfinder. Okay, check disk CFR coming right up. We're done. Check disk CFR has been done on this thing. Now, let's use Seagate Disk Wizard to take an image off of this, then swap it out for the mechanical drive and put it onto that. We'll just leave this thing apart. I mean, we're just going to be testing it anyways. Oh, look! A UI again! And this time, with no SSD. So I guess that's the better way of doing things then. Just take everything off the drive and then put it on another. Don't try a direct transfer in case something glitches. Okay. So this is painfully slow, because we've gone back to mechanical, and more importantly, we've gone back to mechanical from solid states. Solid-state drives don't give a rat's rear about fragmentation. They like to spread things out to keep the wear and tear on the chips to a minimum, which is the polar opposite of how mechanical drives work. So this was painfully slow to start up, even though it's already slow because it's mechanical. So first thing we're going to do is put the computer back together. Yes, it's all running loose! We'll put the computer back together, and then schedule a boot time defrag and let this thing churn away on its little stand or whatever when it's back in its usual place. And now we'll have to figure out how this thing is going to get mounted inside the Silver Bullet. So the Silver Bullet can have an SSD component for the operating system, which is something it drastically needs. And we'll run this sucker into the ground because it's only 3 gig per second instead of 6 gig per second. Until, well, I decide to do otherwise. Okay, now I think we can do a proper sign-off for this video. Much ado about an SSD, or removing an SSD. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.